Hey, welcome back. Welcome to part 2, and you'll notice there's some changes. There's this thing, there's that thing, and then there's these buttons on the wall, and then there's stone here. So, yeah, I did some work off camera just to save on time, because I kind of ran out of time in part 1, unfortunately. But for here, we have actually got the groundworks for all 3 contraptions set up. Now, this is very simple. Now, of course, the only one we're missing is the Redstone Clock that would trigger the beat blocks. But right now, we have command blocks in place for both the Switcheroo blocks, which are player inputted. These are for Donkey Kong Country Returns, or at least that's where I first saw them. And then also down here, this little command block here, we're going to get to this a little bit later, but that's going to allow us to use the jump swap block, which will switch these platforms based on when the player jumps. Now, I do want to point to this little contraption here. This is a T flip-flop. So each of those buttons are set to place a redstone block right here. And when they do, that powers this command block, and that clears this block space, as seen here. But you'll also notice the platform switch. This is something you can only do on Java Edition, and it makes use of one-tick pulses. And that allows us to toggle our command block tower on and off. So all these buttons in the back, they all do the same thing. They're just placing that redstone block right here. That's all they're doing. And of course, we'll have that set up to a clock for the beat blocks, and of course you'll manage to do that. But you'll notice I've changed out the floor here for infested stone. Now, the reason I did infested stone instead of just regular stone is because I plan on using regular stone in this world. It's completely empty right now. However, and I don't want regular stone constantly triggering this contraption. This method is not exactly the most efficient. I have seen it done before with using the scoreboard command, but we're going to work on the jump swap blocks, and that's basically going to trigger when the player jumps. So how do we set this up? Well, I've got this command block kind of laid out. This has got the command that will set the redstone block onto our contraption, allowing it to toggle. However, you'll notice the rest of this is the /execute command. Now this acts as a player detector when the player stands it's currently set to when the player stands in the exact same block space as the infested stone. If we were to change this to -1 real quick, and then we ran and stood on this block, you'll notice that block stays there. So how do we set this up to be configured with our contraption? Well, first things first, we're going to need to count how many blocks above this layer the player is actually standing. So they're standing the 4th block above. So if we set this number all the way over here to 4, we should see this work. We should see it fire when I stand above it. So if I crouch above, you can see that it swaps. Cool. Now all we need to do is take that value, and set it 1 block higher to 5. And that is going to trigger our jump. Although it's on a little bit of a delay. So if I run up, I suck at parkour. So if I run up, I jump, the platforms have switched. Now, of course, the timings need a little bit of work. There's no infested stone under here. Let's fix that. Actually, let's fix that right now. I dug myself a hole. How'd that happen? So if we put the infested stone all under there, you should see that when we stand here and jump, it swaps. Now this needs a little bit of adjusting with the timings, which means we have to kind of fiddle around with our yeah, with our input, but the concept is there. If you perfect the timings, you'll get this right. I almost had it there. So there's that. I bet if I just remove this repeater and replaced it with a redstone dust, this should work. That looked like it. Let's try this again. Boom. Boom! Huh? Now, of course, this works. This isn't perfect. Again, I have seen this design, the jump swap blocks, with the scoreboard command before. It isn't perfect, but it works. And of course, you can just press the button to change it as well. Now, the important thing about pressing the button is, well, this repeater needs to be set on a 2-tick delay, otherwise the button method doesn't work. Obviously, you'd be using a different T flip-flop depending on which of the 3 contraptions you want. I wanted to try to combine them all 3. But the important thing to know about all of these is that they're set on a bit of a delay, so that way when the player... Whoops, gotta turn that off. Let's just set that to impulse. So that way we don't get triggered. And the important thing to know, so that way it doesn't change immediately when you press the button. That's the important part. And I've missed the last room. Well, whatever. But you can see that this contraption works. We've properly implemented the switcheroo blocks and the jump swap blocks. Well, kind of. The method works. I still need a little bit more time to perfect it. Again, this is all just prototype. I'll probably have it perfected before I implement it into an actual map. But for the sakes of this video, demonstrating that this works is all that's needed. So, as for a redstone clock, you would just simply set up a redstone clock, and that would input here every time the signal came around, and it would swap the blocks automatically. That's how you would get your beat blocks. So the jump swap work, the switcheroo work, and then you just need a redstone clock, and you've got the flip swap. So that's all 3 of these contraptions wrapped up in 2 videos. Cool. Now, I do want to say this design isn't perfect. However, it works, and it's good enough for me. I will be putting this in some of my maps. Maybe a little bit better performance. Maybe I'll tweak up the timings in the redstone to make sure it's a little bit more fine-tuned. I have it perfected in another world. I have perfected the timings before, but because I was like trying to get all 3 contraptions onto the same T flip-flop down there, it led to some complications. Obviously, you would use a separate T flip-flop depending on which of these 3 you want to use, because of course that repeater timing has to be adjusted if you're using the button press or if you're using the execute command to trigger it. Regardless, this works, and I'm going to be using it in some of the maps. I'll probably have another video, another episode of Commander Block out next week, so I just want to wrap this one up by saying thank you so much for watching these 2 videos. If you've made it to the end, be sure to leave a like, probably on both of them. I'd really appreciate it. And I'll see you all next week with another contraption. Take care.